G'day guys and girls, my name's Isahooten, and today, the comparisons have returned. That's right, today, as your gracious host, I present to you, in celebration of the recent 1.3.3 update to Terraria, the comparison between the new event, the Sandstorm, and the Blizzard. Now, as most of you may know, as of September 9th, Relogic released a new update to Terraria, all about the Sandstorm event in the desert. In this event, we are faced with new enemies, new debuffs, and new materials. Basically new and shiny things that I am really excited about. Today, in this comparison, I will be taking an in-depth look at both events and really analysing them, and hopefully this information can help you decide which one you like for yourself. I'm going to be sharing my opinion at the end as well, but this is just that, my opinion. Some people will agree, others will hate my guts, but hey, it's just one guy's opinion. Anyway, we will be structuring this video in terms of aesthetics, the general handling and the chronology of the event, the specific unique enemies that spawn during both events, and what drops they have, as well as assessing and comparing the final weapons and craftables that can be made. Then, with all of that information, we will do our final evaluation. Let's get right into it. So when talking about the event itself, proceeding via alphabetical order, the Blizzard is an event that occurs in the snow biome whenever it is raining in the regular overworld. This means that the Blizzard is really just a snowing rain event, which has about a 1 in 6 chance of occurring on any in-game day. The one unique enemy that spawns during the Blizzard during hard mode is the Ice Golem. Of course, regular ice biome mobs will still spawn and attack you during the Blizzard. The Sandstorm is, again, another random event that occurs in the desert and has a 1 in 6 chance of occurring on any in-game day. However, different to the Blizzard, the Sandstorm will actually cause a debuff known as the Mighty Wind. And if that isn't a fart joke in disguise, I don't know what is. This debuff will actually move your character about 1 pixel every 3/4 seconds in the direction of the wind, which can either hinder or improve your movement speed. And trust me, it gets so freaking annoying. There are several unique enemies that spawn during this event, as well as a few underground enemies that start to come to the surface as well. So, well, yeah, blue, orange, icy, sandy, that kind of deal. So, let's move on to the unique enemies that can be found in both events. As I mentioned earlier, the only unique enemy that spawns during a blizzard is the Ice Golem. The Ice Golem is a massive ice giant that walks around quite slowly, but fires a ranged blue laser that can freeze you in place. Firstly, let's take a look at the stats so we can see what we're dealing with here. So the Ice Golem is capable of dishing out about 60 damage in normal mode and 120 damage in expert mode for melee damage, and 64 to 128 range damage via the laser. It has 4000 HP in normal mode and 8000 HP in expert mode, and a defense totaling 32. The Ice Golem can also inflict the Chilled debuff, which slows your movement for up to 90 seconds in expert mode, and 20% of the time can freeze you in place for about 2 seconds, leaving you incredibly vulnerable. Of course, now you're asking, well, Isahooten, how the heck do I actually kill this thing? Fear not, loyal viewer, for I have the answers. Tips for fighting this thing? Well, firstly you actually need to find one to fight. Ice Golems always spawn during a blizzard, but spawn more often during the night. Really, it's just a matter of waiting. To fight this thing, the first thing to remember is that you must continuously attack it. Otherwise, it will just say, well, nope, I'm out of here. Typically, a ranged weapon works quite well against these golems. Try using a gun of some sort or a ranged magic weapon. Melee would be a little bit tricky, especially since these guys absorb 95% of the knockback, meaning that because they don't move much, they can still hit you with their laser pretty easily. Once you've pulled off this impossible task of defeating an ice golem, the Ice Golem could actually drop a couple of things. Firstly, the Golem will always drop one Frost Core, which is used in later crafting. This is the ice biome equivalent to the forbidden fragments from the sand elementals, but we'll get there in a bit. The Ice Golem has a 1 in 3 chance to drop an Ice Feather, which is a crafting ingredient combined with 20 Souls of Flight to make Frost Wings. The Frost Wings are actually fairly powerful, having a 2.76 second flight time and an impressive 81 tile max height from takeoff. Also, the Ice Golem has a 1 in 50 chance of dropping the Frost Staff, which is a magic weapon that shoots an ice sphere, much like the Ice Elementals. This is a very good crowd control weapon as it is able to pierce, and the bolt also travels quite quickly. Now, moving on to the Sandstorm enemies, there are 3 unique enemies in the Sandstorm event, 1 that spawns during pre-hard mode, and 2 that only spawn in hard mode. In pre-hard mode, along with the Tomb Crawler, which is a large worm-type enemy, this tumbleweed-looking monster can spawn as well. Known as the Angry Tumbler, these little guys can actually roll quickly towards the player as an attack. You may not think this is very impressive, but they can actually become extremely fast if they move with the flow of the mighty wind, making them quite hard to avoid. Moving on to something a little bit more interesting though. In hard mode, the Sandstorm definitely becomes a lot more perilous. During the hard mode Sandstorm, 3 enemies can spawn. The first is the Dune Splicer, which is a massively buffed version of the Tomb Crawler from pre-hard mode. The second is known as the Sand Shark and can actually come in 4 different variations, depending on whether the desert is a regular desert, a crimson, corrupted, or hallowed desert. The regular shark is actually the weakest of the 4 variants, but still is quite a formidable enemy due to its dash attack, especially in expert mode. I'll throw the stats up on screen, but I won't go into too much detail. Overall, what I'd say that you need to know is that the Flesh Reaver from the Crimson has the highest damage, the Crystal Thresher has the highest max life, and the Bone Biter from the Corruption has the most defense. All of their drops are about the same. They each have a 12.5% chance of dropping a Shark Fin, and also a 4% chance of dropping either a Dark or Light Shard. To actually fight these enemies though, I recommend using a high knockback weapon, or something that is able to do a lot of quick damage to be able to keep the Sand Sharks at bay and also stop their dash attack. Finally, we reach the most powerful enemy in the Sandstorm, the Sand Elemental. The Sand Elemental can be thought of as the desert counterpart to the Ice Golem, in the way that it is a rather slow-moving mini-boss type enemy that is capable of a lot of damage. Now, the Sand Elemental actually has a very unique attack pattern, in the way that it can summon 3 Sandnados near the player, which are spawned at random locations. The Sandnados can deal around 40 damage to your character continuously if you are caught in one, making them incredibly dangerous. The Sand Elemental itself, however, flies in a non-linear pattern and actually tries to avoid the player as they have no melee attack. The Sand Elemental has 5,000 max HP in normal mode and 10,000 in expert mode, as well as 30 defense, making them quite the formidable enemy. Just like the Ice Golem, however, they have a 100% chance to drop a unique crafting item, which for the Sand Elemental is the Forbidden Fragment. So, even from a glance, we can see that the Sandstorm has a lot more variety of enemies than the Blizzard. However, when we actually compare the 2 main sort of mini-bosses of the events, we see that they're actually quite well-rounded. They're actually quite well-rounded in the way that, whilst the Ice Golem does more damage than the Sand Elemental has more health. Having roughly the same defense, we can see that the developers actually put care into making both of these enemies similar but opposite, so as to give you a unique experience in each event. However, having said that, let's move on to the drops.
The question is, have I learned anything about life?
Now, there aren't many drops in the Blizzard or the Sandstorm, but the drops that are present are actually very valuable. Firstly, starting with the Blizzard, Of course, the Ice Golem has a chance to drop both the Frost Staff and the Ice Feather, which are all well and good, but what we are really concerned with here are the Frost Cores. These little babies are invaluable to ranged and melee characters, mainly because of what they are used to craft. Frost Cores are used with adamantite or titanium bars to make the Frost Armor, which is an armor set that does massive buffs to melee and ranged stats. A total of 46 adamantite or titanium bars and 3 Frost Cores are needed to make this armor set, meaning that you have to kill 3 of the Ice Golems to make the full set. However, this is so worth doing because the bonuses that you receive on this armor set are kind of overpowered, really. Firstly, the helmet increases your melee and ranged damage by a whole 16%, which is huge. The breastplate will increase your critical strike chance for melee and ranged weapons by 11%, and finally, the leggings will increase your movement speed and melee attack speed by 8 and 7% respectively. Finally, the whole armor set will provide a set bonus that melee and ranged attacks will actually cause the Frostburn debuff, which makes enemies slowly lose life over time. My thoughts on this armor is that it is invaluable to melee and ranged characters. Having such huge buffs to damage, critical strike chance, as well as movement and melee speed is really important to characters that need to be able to dish out high amounts of damage and also be able to tank damage at the same time. This gives any melee or ranger character an incredible buff and is definitely worth getting. The forbidden fragments that are dropped by the sand elementals are quite the opposite of the frost cores, but more. All possible craftables using the forbidden fragments require a total of 5 forbidden fragments instead of 3. The forbidden armor set requires a total of 3 forbidden fragments and 46 adamantite or titanium bars, which is exactly like the frost armor. I would actually consider this armor to be the exact counterpart to the frost armor, as the bonuses and set bonus buff magic and summon damage instead of melee and range damage. So not only does this set have a total of 26 defense, it also increases your magic and minion damage by a whopping 15%. It increases your maximum mana by 80, which is 4 stars, and also increases your max number of minions by 2. But the set bonus, which is arguably the best part of this armor set, allows the player to call an ancient Sandnado to the cursor location. This Sandnado will deal continuous damage to any enemy caught in it, but can only be summoned in a 3x12 block space and disappears after 15 seconds. Still pretty damn awesome though. However, the forbidden fragments offer even more on top of this. Using 2 more forbidden fragments, 12 souls of night, and a desert spirit lamp, which is found from the desert spirits in the Crimson or Corruption underground desert biomes, you can make the Spirit Flame, which is a magic weapon that deals 85 base magic damage. That's huge! This weapon casts up to 5 small purple flames that hover around the player in midair, and can home in and deal damage to any enemy once they are within 25 blocks of the player. This weapon, I feel, is incredibly useful for exploration and also for events, mainly because the projectiles do all the work for you. They hone in on targets for you and also eliminate the need for aiming. In my opinion, I feel that the developers put a little bit more thought and more value into the forbidden fragments, as not only are you able to get a wicked armor set that buffs your magic and summoner stats, but technically you can make 2 weapons with this as well, the Spirit Flame and the Sandnado for summoners. However, the Frost Armor is incredibly useful still, as it has a massive 43 defense, which is quite high for its place in the game, but also allows the player to cause the Frostburn debuff, which is pretty darn nifty. So, with all of this information in mind, I think it's about time that we move on to our final evaluation. Here we are, the final frontier. Wait, no, wrong franchise, sorry. The moment of truth. Now we must evaluate our events and decide upon a winner. In the one corner, we have the Blizzard, in the other, the Sandstorm. Firstly, the Blizzard, I feel, is quite an interesting occurrence. I'm not so sure I would call it a complete event. I mean, sure, it's called a rain event, and the blizzard is just a rain event in a snow biome, but I feel it's just a little bit too underwhelming. Also, there is only one unique spawn, and not a whole lot feels very different apart from the increased snowfall and an awesome animated background. I guess it just feels a little bit boring. Having said that, however, the drops and craftables that are acquired from the blizzard are invaluable to most players. Having an armor set that causes lingering damage on melee and ranged attacks, as well as buffing overall defense, damage, critical strike chance, and movement and melee speed is a must for a lot of players, as, well, let's face it, most players play using ranged and melee weapons. However, on the contrary, the Sandstorm has more of a feeling of an actual event. It feels more like an actual event that must be triumphed. What with the new and unique enemies, the mighty wind debuff, and the cool animations, the Sandstorm feels more captivating and makes you want to stay to see what you can find. The drops in this event also have more craftables, and I think that the forbidden fragments are very well placed in the game, and quite a necessary improvement. Mages and summoners can often be overlooked in Terraria, and can be considered more background classes. This new addition of the Forbidden Set and the Spirit Flame and the Sandnado buff the classes and also provide players who prefer summoning or magic damage a bit more variety and more of a progression through the game. In closing, I feel that the Sandstorm is a more valuable event in terms of amount of craftables, but the Blizzard is more valuable in terms of what you actually get. However, this is just down to my personal preference of preferring range and melee characters, even though I still love playing as a mage or a summoner. The Sandstorm, however, also has more variety of enemies, and it feels a lot more engaging and enjoyable, so I'm pretty sure you can guess what my choice is, but nonetheless, drumroll please, the Sandstorm! Yeah, woohoo! Some of you are saying, the rest of you probably thinking that I'm dead to you. But honestly, just from playing these two events, I was a lot more engaged and had more fun with the Sandstorm, as I was constantly battling things and trying to overcome that annoying mighty wind. But in the Blizzard, I basically just stood around and waited for an ice golem to spawn. The drops, however, are incredibly well balanced, and it's nice to see that the developers are deciding to add more items and equipment for mages and summoners, giving more variety to all players of Terraria. So guys and girls, thus concludes the video. So before you go, I would love it if you could participate in the poll right here to let me know your opinion on where you fall in this comparison, and also so we can see what the community thinks about these events. Also leave me a comment with your opinions as well. I love to read them and it lets me see many different perspectives from all of you, which is awesome. If you enjoyed this comparison and haven't clicked away from the video yet, please consider leaving a like on it and also subscribing to my channel. It helps me out so much and also lets me know if you guys want to see more of these in the future. If you have any other suggestions as well for any other comparisons that I do, make sure you leave them below as well. So guys and girls, I think my job is done here. Until next time, this is Isahooten signing off.